Hey guys, welcome to Get in the Mix. In today's tutorial we're going to be taking a look at the Launchpad Pro MK3, the latest Launchpad device from the guys at Novation. There's been some serious new features introduced this time, including Note Mode, Chord Mode and Sequence Mode. So let's dive right in. We're going to be today talking about its use with Ableton, which is what it's been primarily designed for. However, it can be used as a completely standalone sequencer. So for all you gearheads out there, you can crack on with your synthesizers, with your drum machines, and this can be your port of call to control that. But more on that later. So the first thing we'll look at is Session Mode. Session Mode relates directly to the live session mode that we see inside of Ableton. Now to access that, you simply click the tab mode if you're looking at the arranger view like so, and you click tab and you'll be greeted with the live view. Now inside of our live view and on our device here, each column is represented by a channel or track inside of Ableton. Each row represents a scene, which you can think of as a section in your track, and each square represents a clip. Along the right hand side here we have our scene launch buttons, and along the left hand side here we have our clip control and transport functions. Along the bottom row here, the top bottom row might I add, we have our track select buttons, and below that we have our mixer function controls. And across the top here we have our general control settings. The first thing you need to know is, how do I record a clip? Well, it's quite simple. I've set up my Ableton settings in order to give me a count in and to record upon click of either a clip or a scene. So for those of you that don't know, here highlighted in yellow we have the metronome section. I simply click on the little arrow next to it and we can choose a count in. For me, I've got 1 bar, it might be 2, 4, whatever you like. Some people could use none, however none gives you no time to prep, which is, in the kind of case of this, it's ideal to have a little bit of time to get to the sound that you need to do before entering in those notes. And inside of the preferences here, we have record settings. I have turned on start record on scene launch. What that means is if I press a scene launch button and I have a channel armed, then it will record into that clip automatically. So I know we haven't covered any of the other features as of yet, so we'll be more on those shortly, but let's just look at how to record into a clip. We'll simply head to the channel in question and hold the record arm button and select it. Doing so arms and unarms your track. And that means that it's now ready to record into. I'm simply going to launch my scene control here with the button on the right hand side, head to chord mode and just play a few chords in. And then I'm going to hit the record function to stop recording as soon as I'm finished with those notes. So we're ready? And now we can see that that clip's been recorded in and it's been included in our Ableton Live session, ready to go. Now to do that I use Chord Mode, and we'll cover a little bit more on that very shortly. As with most music tech devices, all of our functions here are doubled up with a sneaky little shift function. So we've got clear, doesn't have a shift function, but then we have duplicate. So if I press duplicate, I can duplicate a clip to another scene. But if I held shift and duplicate, I can actually double the length of a clip. Same with quantize, I can activate record quantize, which is going to quantize as I record in, so make sure that nothing is out of time. We have fixed length, and then play and record. So let's move on to the Note Mode. In Note Mode we have 3 standard modes. We have a chromatic mode, a scale mode and a drum mode. These can be accessed by using the shift and note button to access the settings for our Note Mode. As standard, our Note Mode defaults to chromatic. Inside of chromatic you can see that all of the notes inside of our scale are highlighted in blue, and all the notes outside of our scale are greyed out. And so we can know here that by playing just the blue notes, we'll be playing inside of our selected scale. I'll show you how to select that scale shortly. Of course, each of the purple notes represents the root note going up an octave each time. The second view mode is scale mode, which you activate by simply shift and note to access the note settings by hitting the top right square and clicking on note to come back. You now might notice that all the grey notes have been taken away. We simply only have the notes inside of our selected scale. So there's no accidentally playing the wrong note. Everything is inside of our selected scale. The final mode is of course drum mode, which will be activated whenever you're controlling a drum track. So if I head over to a drum channel, for instance an 808 kit that we've got here, and then head back to note, you'll now see that we have our squares in a standard 4x4 drum grid. But for today, we're going to be using our note mode, so I'm going to head back to our note channel where we have all our notes ready to go. Now inside of note settings, it's about time to note a few of the finer details inside here. So you might notice that across the top left hand corner here we have our red keys. These are what are called our overlap settings. So it's how the notes are going to be displayed. For instance, if I click on the first one and head back to note, you'll notice that we have a root note at each end and all the notes in the scale in between. Again, heading back to note mode, I can select a different type of overlap view. This time you'll see that it's laid out slightly different. Each one of these has a different use and is mostly for a different style of playing. So you choose one that works for you and stick with it. Going back to the note settings, again, shift and note. The next thing to note will be the rows opposite, clear and duplicate. These represent the note in which the scale of which we're playing. You can think of this bottom row here as white keys on a keyboard and this top row here as the black keys on a keyboard. In this case we've selected F because we're going to play our track in the key of F. Below that, next to quantize and fixed length, we have our scale selection mode. Now this is all laid out in the instruction manual and you might find a handy infographic about here. Maybe not, who knows?
You wish.
No. We then here can select the type of scale that we want. I've got one selected, I can't quite remember what it was, perhaps it's maybe it's a harmonic minor scale or a pentatonic minor scale, one of the two, but it's there ready for us, and again you can select that as you want. And finally, the bottom two rows here, the yellow squares, are the MIDI channel that our note mode will be transporting on. So in this case, we've got it set to MIDI mode 2. Now as a standard I think it defaults to 1, but you might notice that inside of Ableton here we've selected our MIDI channels on our drum kit, bassline and synth sound for channel 1, channel 2 and channel 3. So that I know that when I play my note mode, it's only going to be sent to my synth channel inside of Ableton rather than accidentally sending it to the drums or even the bassline. So the next function we'll be looking at is chord mode. So I'll head over to my chord mode and we can see that we're greeted by this row of coloured squares down the side, orange squares here and white squares on the far right. Inside of chord mode, each one of these columns represents the notes inside of our scale. You can see that as we go up, the note goes up the scale. The orange squares that are on the side here represent preset triads within a certain octave. So it's got some chord patterns there, they're already ready to go, and they're all inside the same octave so that the voicing sounds correct when you use them. In the bottom right hand corner here we have a purple and red, is it red? Yeah, purple and red square. Our purple acts just like a sustain pedal on a keyboard. So if I hold these notes and let go, it stops. If I hold them with my sustain note, you can see there that the notes continued just like they would if I was using a conventional sustain pedal. And along the right side here we have our chord banks. This allows us to save customized chords for easy playback. So for instance, if I select the first 3 notes in this bottom row, that's a standard triad in the key of F. If I hold those 3 notes and select a chord bank, I can now relaunch that chord at the push of one button. This is really great for selecting chord patterns that I might want to play multiple times and I don't want to have to keep playing them in. I can simply choose the second chord, pop it in there, and the third one, and now I've got a progression ready on a single note. It's worth noting that these are editable on the fly, so if I hold this you'll see that the notes in that chord are highlighted, and any other note that I add itself to that chord. So it's a really nice way of developing chords and adding extra layers after the initial writing. However, you may not want to do that. You may want to be able to play that chord on a single note and play a few notes in and out. To do so, simply hold the chord button and press the red square in the bottom, which activates the chord lock. Now, when I play my chord and play some other notes, they're not added to the chord forever, they're just played over the top. So when I play that, we just have our initial chord. That could be useful for piano type sounds where I might want to play a chord, but also play a little melody over the top and record that in as I go. For now, we'll clear out those. So I'll hold clear, click our banks, and we remove those chords that we've preset. Another fine point to mention will be the transport arrows up and down, which in this case shift the octave of our chords. So if I press up, it's going to go up an octave each time. To reset that, simply press them both at the same time, and I'm back down to my initial note. Now it's time for that bit that we all love, music theory. I joke, but it is important that we understand a little bit of the fundamentals inside of chord mode. So the first thing to note is that any lilac coloured row here represents a minor chord. Any purple row represents a major chord, and a green row represents a different type of chord, whether it's diminished, seventh, whatever it might be. The first three notes in each row represent a triad. Adding the fourth note in a row adds a seventh to your chord, and adding the fifth note in the row adds a compound fifth in the octave above. So we can see there that we can start really getting some nice layers. Triad, adding a seventh, adding the compound fifth. We'll get there in the end. So now we've looked at chord mode and its uses, let's quickly record some of those chords in like we did with our session mode. So I'm going to head back to session. I've selected our track and it's already armed and ready to go. I'm simply going to launch my scene with this scene record, click chord, and record my chords in. Happy days, that's all recorded in, ready to go. If you enjoyed today's video, be sure to drop us a like, drop us a comment in the comment section if you've got any questions, and be sure to subscribe. And as always, get in the mix.